We now have much more in the second round of meetings today between Detroit's emergency manager Kevin Orr, representatives with the city's union, and also pension officials as well. Today's discussion centered around health care. Brad Coulter is here to help kind of sort things out, if you will. He's from O'Keefe and Associates, a local firm handling bankruptcy. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Well, thank you for having me.
Now, I don't really want to get into the specifics because they change day to day, minute to minute. But let's talk a little bit about maybe this might be a tactic, whether you think so or not. Some of the pensioners said today that it appears that Orr is just kind of going through the motions and really has a plan to go through bankruptcy. Is that a tactic, or is that for real?
No, I think he's legitimately negotiating with all the stakeholders, and you really have to. A bankruptcy of this magnitude is going to be extremely expensive. I think the $100 million estimate that came out in the press recently is probably accurate, and it's going to be years to go through the litigation.
Yeah.
Unlike, say, GM and Chrysler, which had the backing of the federal government, where you saw a quick transition through bankruptcy, the federal government doesn't have a stake in this, so I think you're going to see a protracted litigation if he does file.
Now, Brad, you mentioned the federal government. I know the unions and the people related to the pensions believe that it is under constitutional state law to protect that. Is it truly protected? Can, through Chapter 9, they go through and have the federal government usurp that and have sovereignty over that and take that away from them?
Well, that's one of the main questions that's going to be litigated. Yeah. Typically, federal law trumps state law, but the real question is, does federal law trump the state constitution? And to my knowledge, that's never been litigated, so it's hard to tell where that'll come out. The other issue is the Michigan Constitution, while it protects the impairment of earned benefits, is silent on who's responsible for paying. Everybody's assuming it's the city of Detroit, but I've heard some union leaders suggest it may be the state of Michigan that's responsible, which will be a whole other battle if that's an issue they try to push.
And Brad, you've been following this. How does this all look? The negotiations, how are they going, and how do you think there's going to be an opportunity for compromise? What do you think so far?
I think it's going to have to be a filing because there's too much money at stake.
And by that you mean a bankruptcy?
A bankruptcy filing. I think there's going to have to be. There's too much money at stake and too many precedents that are going to be set, whether it's with the bondholders or the retirees. I think it's going to have to be litigated, and I do think they're going to end up filing.
So you're basically predicting that we're going to have to go through bankruptcy?
I think so. Yeah. I think so.
Now, Kevin Orr said maybe 50-50. You say otherwise. If that's the case, what happens then? I mean, a bankruptcy, what are we talking about time frame here? Are we talking about, he's done in 15 months, Kevin Orr is, with his job. A bankruptcy could take us years down the road. Right?
It certainly could. I think you could look at 2, 3, 4, 5 years easily on a bankruptcy, depending on the litigation and the speed of the litigation. There's just too many issues at stake that are going to set a precedent for other cities and school districts, both in the state and nationally, depending on the outcome of this.
We know that there is a lot of fees involved with the bankruptcy. Can he avoid that and go through some sort of, I don't know, maybe negotiation and just some sort of contract outside of bankruptcy? Can that still happen?
It can. The problem is you've got so many constituents. And for example, all it takes is one constituent to get a judgment against the city to throw it out of whack. The pension funds recently got a $30 million judgment against Detroit. Yeah. If Detroit doesn't pay, they can get a special assessment put on the property tax rolls, so the taxpayers have to pay it. The bondholders and everybody else start getting judgments. He's going to have to file for bankruptcy to throw those judgments out.
And he says, we're talking about Kevin Orr, says the decision may come down next week, so we might know then.
Wouldn't be surprised.
Okay,
yes.
Brad, thank you very much.